The range of plants grown by amateur gardeners is extremely wide, and correspondingly, there are many pests, diseases, and disorders that can occur. In this series, the various triggers that may affect a particular plant are listed by symptoms. For example, leaf discolored, followed by a description of the possible cause and the correct control measure in each case. This enables the gardener to avoid the hit and miss methods that are too often used by amateurs. If the correct control measures are used at the onset of symptoms, not only will time, labor, and money be saved, but there will also be less risk of disturbing the balance of nature by the measure of chemicals. Let's start with the basic terms pests and diseases. First of all, let's differentiate between pests and diseases. The term pest encompasses all animals that damage plants, including vertebrates such as birds and mammals, as well as the smaller animals such as insects, mites, mollusks, and earworms. If the pest can be seen on the plant, then identification is fairly easy. But often, particularly with microscope pests such as earworms and mites, it is necessary to identify the pest from the symptoms it has caused. These symptoms vary according to the plant and the pest that is involved, but they are very generally related to the way in which the pest feeds. Diseases are caused by parasitic organisms called pathogens, of which there are several different types. The most important pathogens are the fungi. These are the plants that contain no chlorophyll and so are unable to make their own carbohydrates. Instead, they consume food already manufactured by green plants. The vast majority of fungi live on dead and decaying matter, but a few obtain their food from living plants. It is this latter group that is responsible for fungal disease. Most fungi are composed of microscopic threads and so can only be identified by the symptoms and not by the organisms. On some species, however, these threads join together to form large structures such as toadstools and bracket fungi. In these cases, identification becomes easier. Bacteria are much smaller than fungi, being only just visible with an ordinary microscope. They cannot break down the protective outer layer that plant possesses, as can most pathogenic fungi, so infection takes place through wounds or natural openings. These organisms can only be identified by experts, and gardeners have to recognize the disease by the symptoms or produced. Another group of organisms called actinomyces are closely related to bacteria but differ in structure. They are not motile. The only organism of any importance in this group is tumors, which causes potato common scab. False silver leaf is a psychological disorder that is caused by the malnutrition of an irregular supply of moisture in the soil. The foliage shows a silver discoloration, but unlike silver leaf, most leaves on the trees are affected at the same time and there is little or no dieback. If such symptoms appear early in the season, spray with a foliage feed the following year feed mulch and water as necessary to encourage vigor. Should any dieback occur, cut out branch back to plain living tissues. Honey fungus causes the leaves to become discolored and the shoots to die back. Affected trees often die suddenly. Let's talk about cultural control of pests and diseases. A most common means of combating pests and diseases is by good cultural practice. Through preparation of the soil before planting or sowing will ensure that plants are given a good start. Fertilizers and limiting may be needed depending on local soil conditions and the requirements of the plants. Most plants will benefit from a regular supply of water, especially if dry spells coincide with the critical stages in the plant's growth, such as germination, bud formation, flowering, and fruiting. Mulching the soil surface with well-rotted manure or some similar layer of organic matter will help to retain soil moisture as well as providing some nutrients and suppressing weeds. Seeds should be sown at the correct time, taking into account local conditions, and if they are sown prematurely or too late, the plant may fail to thrive. Similarly, germination will be poor if the seeds are sown at the wrong depth. The rate of sowing is also important since sowing too densely will result in seedlings that are thin, weak, and susceptible to diseases because they are competing with each other for water, nutrients, and space. With plants raised in containers, the time of planting out is less important, but it is necessary to make sure that they are planted with the soil surface within the container flush with the level of garden soil. On bare-rooted trees and shrubs, there is change of color or soil mark at the base of stem, which indicates the correct level of planting. When planting any type of plant, but particularly trees and shrubs, a hole large enough to accommodate the roots should be prepared. However, if the soil is very heavy and subject to waterlogging, digging. The hole should not be filled with a lighter material such as peat or compost, because it will then act as a sump into which water from the surrounding heavier soil will flow, making matters worse. Any treatment to lighten the soil should be carried out over a wide area and not just in planting holes. When digging the holes in a clay soil, do not use a spade or towel, because such equipment will compress the sides of the holes and the plants or fruits may not be able to penetrate onwards. The roots of the plants need to be well spread out when planting. If the roots are partly one-sided or entwined around each other and cannot be spread out, soak the roots in a bucket of water for a few days until they are more pliable. Similarly, if a plant is very pot-bound, whether it be a container-grown plant to be planted out in the garden or a pot plant to be potted on the root system, should be held under running water for a short period or dipped in a bucket of water. This allows some of the original compost to be dislodged and a few roots can be teased out at intervals around the soil bowl. The choice of plants is important in the control of pests and diseases, and local advice should be sought about which plants are likely to do well under the local soil and climate condition. Seed, plant bulbs, and other planting materials should be obtained from reputable suppliers. Cheap lots from market stores or mail order concerns may be carrying pests and diseases that can take years to eliminate from garden. There are some plant varieties that are resistant or have a degree of tolerance to certain pests and diseases. Root bound is a thing that is very difficult to deal with while planting, especially when you are growing plants in pots. So when losing the roots, you need to be very careful that you may not might hurt the roots and do not disturb their natural circle or natural growth. It may affect the growth of plant very badly. You need to be very careful while losing the roots. You need to check them. You need to you can even water them to lose the roots, or you can let the root bounce sit in water for a while so that it may loosen up. But because of this, it can also be affect waterlogging in plants, so you need to be very careful while losing the roots. While losing the roots, one thing you need to be very careful about is that you should not and you should never hurt the roots. Okay, so let's see how we lose the roots. Once the roots have been fully loosed, you need a new pot where you could repot the plant. You need a very well dried air soil mix in which you should have perlite, enough amount of nutrition, soil, and well amount of perlite. And the bottom holes are very much important for the plant to grow. And you can repot that plant into the soil. Half fill the plant first of all with a mixture of perlite and soil, and then place the wounded plant in the pot, in the next pot. And then what you need to do is uh, check the exact amount, have exact amount of soil you need to be in that pot or whatever. Once, you should also check the air quality, and if the plant is breathable or not. If you think that the amount of soil is too much, you can lessen the amount of soil, but you should never overdo it. ओके, और जब एक दफ़ा वो उसके अंदर चला जाए तो उसके बाद आपने मज़ीद मिट्टी एक दफ़ा डाल देनी है, ताकि आपका प्लांट इस खुली आपके प्लांट्स की रूट्स सही तरह सांस ले सके, और मज़ीद उसमें मिट्टी वगैरह डाल के आप उसको भरते हैं.